Well, it's 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Hello and welcome to the Alpha Anywhere Demo and Q&A webcast. I'm Dave McCormick here from Alpha Software. I'm pleased to present Dean McCormick, no relation, our lead solutions engineer here at Alpha. Today, Dean is going to be covering the use, I believe, of the ink control. He'll tell me if he's not in a minute. But then after that, he'll be questions. So now would be a great time to go ahead and type in those questions. You could do that by typing them into the questions box of the GoToWebinar control panel. Also, today's session will be recorded. You should be able to find a copy of that at videos.alphasoftware.com. So let's begin. Dean, let me go ahead and take you off mute if you're not already. Hello, Dean, are you there?
Good. Yes, sir. How am I coming through okay?
Yep, you're coming through.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Well, hello, everybody.
So I've made you the presenter, but I don't see your screen yet. You might need to hit share or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, there we go. How about that? I didn't even know I became the presenter.
Oh, there you go, coming through.
Excellent, excellent. Well, keep an eye on it, make sure it flows smoothly. Dean McCormick here. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking time to spend with us this week. We have a great turnout and are going to have a really good session here. As Dave mentioned, I've got a quick introduction. It's a quick demo, but more importantly is a interesting subject that is going to become very, very near and dear to anybody who's doing field inspection apps or any kind of mobile applications. It's an extremely powerful feature that was released with the Alpha v4, and we're just scratching the surface with it in terms of what it can do, and that is called the ink control. So we're going to dive into that, start that process today, and start talking about what it is, how it works, and a little bit of background information, a couple quick demos, and then go from there. And then we're going to open it up to your questions, and that's why we're here. In fact, I want to say thank you to one of our loyal listeners who actually asked us about the ink control, and that kind of triggered our thinking about putting together this information. So you are always in the driver's seat, and we highly recommend that if you're interested in the subject matter, feel free to email us at guides, that's G-U-I-D-E-S, at alphasoftware.com, guides at alphasoftware.com. Dave monitors that, and then we share those incoming. We've actually got a couple other really interesting webinars coming up that have been triggered from our loyal listeners, and so we're very, very excited on that. So keep those coming in. That really helps us understand what people are interested in, what is giving them problems, what is stuff they want to learn more about, because Alpha has such a broad footprint between mobile, desktop, web, server, coding, user interface design, all of it. It's a very wide platform, and it really helps us when you tell us what are those key things that you're looking to get information about. In fact, I had another interesting email this morning, Dave, from someone who was interested in our WorldPay integration, and so I was able to point out some information for them. And we can do that as one of the future sessions if people are interested, how to integrate the WorldPay and also Stripe mobile payment solutions. Very, very powerful for anybody doing e-commerce or paid kind of sites. So keep those questions coming in. We love it. We think it's awesome. And with that, I have a couple quick announcements. First is make sure that you've signed up for the Alpha DevCon 2016 coming up. Man, only a couple months away. I mean, what are we on the 20th today? And that's September 21. We're almost to the T-2 months and counting spot there. So you can go to Alpha Anywhere or alphasoftware.com, click on the DevCon link there, and you'll find the information about it. And again, as I kind of mentioned a few minutes ago, one of the things that are really, really, really powerful is the fact that Alpha has such a broad footprint. Again, as I was mentioning it, mobile, web, disconnected, mobile browser, phone gap, this and that. And often, you know, it's a very broad platform, and some of the challenges is to kind of get your hands around what you need to achieve your particular business goals. And I find the Alpha DevCon is really powerful for two reasons. One is we're going to cover all of those different subjects through the technical, through the training, through ad hoc sessions, etc. We're going to touch on every element of Alpha development. So if you're interested in user interface design, we're going to be focused on that. If you're interested in plumbing, how that's working, interested in the upcoming products like the Alpha Cloud, how to deploy it on the new Alpha Cloud, we're going to have all this information in there. So it's incredibly valuable for you to go in and learn in one spot all of your kind of hot button issues. And beyond that is get to know and build a relationship with the people who are already, say, a little bit ahead of you in those areas. And it proves, or it increases your ability to deliver in a big way. So we highly recommend checking it out. We have our first day of training, which will be on mobile optimized forms. We finished all that up. In fact, we've got scheduled our training run through in the next couple weeks. Make sure we want it perfect. We want it super slick, and we want it so that within a day you're walking out and ready to go. So we're going to be doing some test runs on that, and we're very excited. It really is a very robust app, and to create all this functionality in a single day is pretty amazing, and to be able to do it also while training is also very powerful. So we're going to have it tight and ready and exciting for you to go through. So go ahead and sign up now. So with that, what I'd like to do at this point is do a process check, make sure my audio and video is coming through there. I'm going to go through.
Okay.
Excellent, Dave. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and start talking about a topic that I've had a number of people talking about, which is the ink control and what it is, what's the background, etc. Now, the cool thing about this is a two-parter. The first part, I just kind of want to set the stage, show you some examples and things like that. I'm actually going to go through and demonstrate how to put it in control and put it on there, but that will be a next session. I just thought it was too much time to try and do in one session, and I wanted to make sure we left plenty of time to answer questions that you may have. And in fact, while you're listening here, feel free to go to your GoToWebinar control panel, go to the questions section, input your questions, and Dave will be monitoring that through my presentation, so we'll get them queued up to start answering and talking about them in a little bit there. So with that, we are on to the ink control. So first and foremost, if everybody could take a look at the screen and tell me what you see. What do you see? What does it make you feel like?
The Rorschach test is what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. No bad words, but feel free to type in what you think that is in our chat window. Dave will be monitoring that, and obviously, if it's really strange and disturbing, we'll notify the police. But you know, that's okay. But we're kind of curious. What do you think that is? Well, in this case, it's ink blot, or as my little girls like to call it, a splot, because it's been splotted on the page. And you know, I kind of wanted to start here with that image concept. Is that there's a really powerful underlying concept that's built into this control that I don't think has been fully appreciated. I think it's appreciated by Dan Bricklin and Selwyn and the team that drove the development of this, and it's part of an overall process that the computing program has gone through. But ink has been around for a long, long, long time, and there's a lot of really powerful things about ink. The old adage that ink on paper beats your memory every day. Ink is a powerful way to communicate with each other, people. Ink opens up very powerful creative things. I mean, what people can do with ink and a pen is nothing less than amazing. I'm not really an artist, and I'm always in awe on what people can do with that. And that's what really underpins the ink control, is that it opens up a whole new way for your clients, your business folks, whatever, to interact with your computer solution and use a very natural process to communicate. And that's the heart of the ink control. You know, if we look at a lot of the demos and everything else you've seen so far, you know, you log on, you can enter some data, maybe select some things from list, but it's very form-oriented, it's very structured, and it's very oriented around regulated kind of, you know, we're collecting this data into a database. And we extend that by the ability for you to capture things such as images and video and now voice, which also are very nice ways to add in there. And so in that, you know, you can say, hey, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So instead of describing what's wrong with the machine, you can take a picture of it. But this takes it to the next level. This breaks down that relationship between the person, the data that they're doing, and what they're trying to communicate with someone. And this is super, super important, is what the ink control can do. So I anticipate that, this is a new control. We're just kind of getting it out there, starting to do training in other pieces. As people embrace the ink control, as it becomes a key part of the ecosystem, you're going to find out you're going to be able to produce solutions that just blow people away. And what I'd like to do is, that's kind of let's call it the philosophical underpinnings of the ink control and why I think it's so incredibly powerful. But what I'd like to do is go ahead and show you an example of it in operation. And what's very exciting about this, and if you'll wait just one moment, I'm going to bring it up on my screen. I'm using my, you'll see in a moment, and Dave, you can confirm up here that we have my iPhone
Your server
here.
is running, yep.
Yep, good. And then I've got, of course, My Angela and My Time, Tom. We're not going to go through those today. Highly entertaining for a 6-year-old girl. So just to let you know, and as any other person. Oh, by the way, that's Brett Johnston, who's the VP of Professional Services, bothering me, so we'll get rid of that. But I'm going to go into the Alpha Memo. This is a application that's available for free through the Alpha, or through the Apple Store. And this is an Alpha app that's actually running on the iPhone that I downloaded through the App Store. In fact, if I go over here real quick, just not to belabor it, but I think I want people to understand what's going on here, is Alpha, I always misspell it. I always say Loa. Alpha Memo. There we go. Check this out. Right there in the Apple Store is Alpha Memo, a solution that was built 100% with Alpha, deployed through the PhoneGap and out into the world. In fact, by the way, we have another one, Dave, I wanted to share with you. It's a application that was built for for churches. It's really cool. It's going to be on the App Store. It allows people to interact and talk and discuss things with their parishes. It's really cool. We built that for one of our clients there, and that's also going through the Apple Store and the Android Store at the same time. So we're really starting to see a lot more Alpha things get released into the wild, not just in private environments, but actually in there. So you can go onto the Apple Store and look for Alpha Memo and download this memo. And here it is. So I've got this nice little application here. You can see I've got basically one that I already was playing on there. But let me go ahead and click New. Okay, check it out. Here's our ink control. And as you can see, there's nothing in there, but I want to go ahead and add a picture in here. So I'm going to click on here, and here, you've seen this before. Oh, wait, and then my monster fingers, but I'll go there. Okay, so you'll notice now that I have in my Alpha Memo a picture. And this is, again, all running on my iPhone in real time. So I can sit there and start looking at it and playing with it, and I can edit it. Now I can go in here, and this is our ink control here. And as you can see, I can start drawing on it. And as you notice up in the left-hand corner, you see that it's starting to do that. So let me move this down over here. Let's go ahead and go over here. Let's go in. Let's kind of zoom in a little bit here. Move that up there. I can go down and stuff like that. So now I can draw, let's say I want to do a big squiggly line with this and go like that, and other pieces there. So as you can see, this all works very well. And it's very powerful in terms of what it can do. But the powerful thing about this, beyond the fact this is an Alpha solution running on my phone real time, is the fact that I can communicate with someone in a, let's call it a more natural way. So let me go ahead and delete. I'm going to erase those little markings over there. So I'm using my little eraser tool. Put it here. But let's say I have a problem where, okay, I'm out in the field and I've just, I have a field service app and I've walked in to someone and they say, you know what, my mouse is giving me a hard time. And so I go in here and I say, well, what's wrong with your mouse? And they go, okay, it's this. And so I want to I'm going to send this mouse back for repair, but I want to make it easy for my repair team to figure out what's wrong. So in this case, the problem happens to be right here. And it's in this area right here. Oh, that's kind of not a very good color because it doesn't show up against the red. So let's go and make that blue large and go back here and say this is my area where the problem is right there. And that's kind of ugly. I don't like that. So let's go ahead and just kind of make it a highlight kind of scenario so I can highlight. So as you can see, lots of people want to talk to me. They should know I'm in this right now. So I'll just go like this, and then I'm going to go and make a little square and say that's the problem there. And then I can draw a little arrow here so everybody knows that that's what's going to go on. This is my arrow here. And then once I'm done, I'm click done. You'll notice now that I have an image which clearly communicates where the problem point is in the system here, and I can name this and submit it. But as you can see, I didn't have to sit here and write the right-click button approximately 1 inch from the front is this, 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 this. I could communicate visually. And this is powerful in two ways. One is that it takes, other than me fumbling around, it'll take me 2 seconds to actually highlight where the problem is on the screen versus writing a whole description of what it is. Secondly, guess what? I don't need to know English to know where the problem is on this mouse. This actually goes beyond English because we're communicating in a pictorial, pictographic methodology, which is very powerful for, say, multinational solutions. You know, maybe you have U.S. and English. You can do a lot of English, or you can do kind of multilingual in Alpha, but this breaks that down. So as you can see, it's really easy. It works very well. It's powerful and simple to use. And as you can see now, I've got a couple notes in there. I can create a new one here. Let's go ahead and take another picture here of a microphone right here. Let's take a microphone picture here. And I can say, oh, you know, there's a problem with the cable right here, so let me edit that. Let me go ahead and go down to the cable area, and let me zoom out a little bit. Then I'm going to say, here's the problem. It's in the connector right here. Done. Boom. Now I submit that, say, for repair, and people know where the problem occurs, etc. Easy to do from there. So this is a real-world example of how ink notes have been applied into in this case, a mobile. And you notice the integration of, I was able to take a quick picture and then be able to do a, go through and quickly do a image and modify it within a few seconds. You can imagine how powerful this is for someone out in the field who doesn't have a lot of time to sit there and text a lot of descriptions. They just want to take a picture, circle the, say, control panel that's got a problem, or the switcher, etc., and give it back to the end person from that standpoint there. Now, the other aspect about this is that this works not only on a mobile platform, but also on the desktop platform. So you can put it actually through the desktop web, and I'll show you that next week in a little bit more detail, basically, or in our next session, how it works on there, and then some other really powerful tools on it. By the way, you'll notice in this situation, I took a picture and then modified it here. There's no reason why you couldn't already have an existing picture ready to be marked up on your server. So let's say it's something where every time someone goes out in the field, you want them to annotate, say, a control panel, or instead of taking a picture, you just want them to mark up, say, what something looks like out in the field. Well, they don't have to take a picture. You can actually have it preloaded, and we'll show you that too, which is really nice from a communication standpoint. So this is what we do in terms of how the ink control can be used in real time, as you can see. So we'll take that off there. So with that, I just want to spend a few more minutes talking a little bit more about the background of the ink control. Then we'll go into our Q&A. But I hope that gives you a good demonstration. If you have a chance, do absolutely go onto the Alpha App Store, or not the Alpha App Store, but the onto the app stores and download it and play with it. It's a free app. It's fun. It's enjoyable to play with. You'll get a good feel for what you can do, and hopefully kind of get those creative juices going. So a couple other little background things on is that I've done my demonstration, but I want to talk a little bit about what ink is, what it actually is, and what it is not. I also want to talk about the fact it's a data binding or a data bound control type. And I want to do some examples, but I'm going to do that for the next session. So let's talk about that. First, what is ink? Well, what you're seeing on the screen right now is ink. When I drew on that screen there, I created the circles, the arrows, and things like that. You'll notice something that in terms of my visual, it was circles and squares and arrows and things like that. But this is actually what is literally generated by the computer. And this has all the information about what is that ink, how did I draw it here. Now this is really, really, really cool. First, you'll notice it's just text. So therefore, it's not this heavy-duty image or anything else. So therefore, it's super lightweight. When you're taking ink information out in the field, the amount of data that's coming back is minuscule. Now, if you've taken a picture and then put ink on top, you obviously have your picture, but the ink itself is separate from the picture, and is textual in nature. And so the cool thing about this is that you can actually draw a very extensive kind of diagram, etc., and have a very small amount of data. So for mobile apps, that's really cool because therefore you don't have to carry a lot of data on the local system. And also when you do your synchronizations, they're very, very quick in nature. The other is that this is textual data, so you use standard. In fact, if you're using on your database, in MySQL, we just create what's called a long text field because this could get bigger. It's not 255 characters. It's a bit more than that. On SQL Server, we use what's called an nvarchar max, and then in Access, it's the long text. But you're using a text field. And the nice thing about these text fields also is that modern SQL databases are very efficient in terms of storing that kind of information. They don't create these big blocks of memory with a small amount. They dynamically size things as they need there. So the cool thing about Ink is that it is creating, when you're actually interfacing with it, you're drawing, but behind the scenes is that's translating it into this Ink concept. Now, the other thing I want to draw attention to is that this is not SVG. That's modern misconception is that SVG is kind of used to render things, but the actual data itself is not SVG code. And if you're interested a little bit more about SVG and how you can use that in your solutions, about 3 weeks ago we did a demonstration of how to include SVG icons. We kind of showed you SVG, showed you the background, etc. So very important, I want you to be clear, is that the Ink kind of data type is not SVG. Although in the interface we use SVG to do some rendering, but that's under the covers handled by Alpha. So what you're seeing here is something that's been done by the tool and stored from that standpoint there. And easy to store, easy to view and review. It's not these weird blobs and things like that. And again, small footprint, so you can actually create a huge amount of drawings, but have a very small amount of data actually being stored into the database from that standpoint. And so Ink, what I'm going to go through next is actually, when we get back together, I'm going to actually build with Ink Control, show you how to add it to your system. As I mentioned before, real quick before I move on to the question and answer, that the Ink Control, let's go back up here, is a data-bound control type. So like text boxes, drop-down boxes, lists, etc., you bind this control to the database. So the cool thing about that is that after you finish drawing and saving that drawing, the system takes over and just says, okay, here, I'm putting it in this field, and then I'm going to put it in this field on the database. So to actually add it to your applications is a very natural process. There's a couple extra little steps that I'll show you next time, but the reality is you just add the control, you bind that control to your data field in your backend database, and it's going to take care of everything for you in terms of translating that graphical representation into a back office or back into the database all for you. So once you start using it, it's very natural. It's easy to add these things in there and easy to handle from that standpoint. And again, small footprint, syncs really fast, saves really fast, and is easy to manage within the database. So that's an introduction. The Ink Control is incredibly powerful for a couple reasons. One, philosophically, it breaks down the interaction between the user and the computer to communicate information, i.e. now you can communicate visually. You can use a very natural method of drawing on a screen with your finger or your mouse to actually highlight. You can see we have a small set of controls there, but we can add things like stamps. You can add your own, it's more sophisticated, but you can add your own, instead of lines, you could actually add in other kind of elements in there. So you could have pre-made elements that say you want to put a star on the screen, etc. All of these things are available in the Ink Control to help it make it easy for someone to communicate with you. And then the other part of it that's really, really powerful is that it's a natural part of the Alpha ecosystem in terms of that it's a data-bound control that you can add to your solution, and Alpha is going to take care of all the heavy lifting of saving and storing that information for you, much like we do with text boxes, text areas, and drop-down boxes. So it's really fun. Next time we're going to dive in and show you how to add an Ink Control to a data-bound form, how to then modify the look and feel of that control, and then a quick example of how you can actually see how it saves it into to the underlying database, and we'll go through all those pieces there so you have a good sense of how the ink control there is. Start between now and then, start thinking about it. Think of your clients, think of what they're doing and how you might be able to apply this technology to help them out. One thing that's really cool is that when people see it, they're pretty blown away. They're like, wow, that is really cool. That solves a lot of problems I've been having in terms of communicating between people in the field and the back office, or even like, how about people, engineers in the manufacturing versus the engineer in the front? I mean, a visual representation is worth 1,000 words, and you can literally look and say, oh, there's where the problem is, and be able to, or show a leak and show where the leak's coming from without having to go through it, and you can reduce that communication time and provide a much more powerful process for your clients and for your stakeholders. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Dave and allow him. By the way, make sure you put in your what you think this is, and also how does it make you feel, into your chat window, and we'll be loving to find out what our wonderful developers are like. Might scare us.
So my two favorite answers so far that people have written in is, one is it's a ghost.
Ah, good.
Ghost.
Kind of a Ghostbusters thing, you know?
And the other one was something to the effect of, I don't know, but it looks like something I'm going to have to clean up.
That is apparent. That must be apparent.
That's the parent talking, exactly. Right?
I know. It's very cool. Yeah, I think the ghost thing is pretty good. I mean, I've been slimed, you know, so.
Yeah, there you go.
Excellent.
So let's start with some ink questions, since we have a couple here. The first one is that you had mentioned that the ink control does not save the data in SVG format. So the question is, what is it saving it in? Is this some?
It's a proprietary language that that really Alpha developed and put together.
Okay, and Dan Bricklin, I think, probably.
Really, Dan Bricklin, yeah. And it's really a very powerful language in and of itself. It's really not been exposed per se in terms of, there's not a manual on how to write ink. It's really facilitated by the user interfaces that are built there. But you can kind of look at it and discern it. It's talking about, okay, here's your kind of area that you're drawing on. So the first is kind of like, what's your frame you're drawing on, and what are the bounding areas? And it actually includes some date and time information in this situation. This I pasted yesterday when I was preparing, so you can see the date and time for this is yesterday. So there's some time information that's in there. And then you'll note also there's something, a pin, and so it talks about a concept of a pin that's going to drop on it. And then these are coordinate, I don't know what it really does, but it's some coordinate function where basically it understands, like when you drew on the screen, where'd you start, where'd you end, how thick was it, was there a curve associated with it? I mean, that's the real powerful, is that you can have curves and splines and things like that, and the system handles it all for you. So, but we want to be clear, it's not SVG. That's a common misconception. We may take this and turn it into SVG to render it on a web browser kind of behind the scenes as the technique for displaying it to you, but in the underlying data, it's its own animal, and from that standpoint, and it'll be fully supported going forward. So if you start creating ink and save that data 3, 4, 5 years ago, it's going to render properly. You're not going to have to worry about us mucking with that. So that's just kind of our backwards compatibility that we always take into account.
Excellent. Just a quick process check. Someone had said, look, when I'm logged in, at least today, the audio seems to be dropping in and out. Is anyone else having that problem? I haven't heard that problem, and I know we're in different cities practically across the country, but if anyone else has said, yeah, the audio today is terrible, just let me know so I can get in touch with Citrix and see what's up for future sessions.
Yeah, Dave, you're coming okay, fine for me. I'm not hearing any drop-offs. I hope the person's not having a stroke or something. So.
Yeah, I don't think he is.
But we're going to think it's technical, okay? We're going to think positive.
We're going to go with that.
But no, and in fact, you could all raise your hands, anybody who's having that same problem, just kind of statistical, you know, and Dave can look at the hands being shown.
Yeah, if you do the hand raise thing, that would be superb. Or comedy.
Use the technology.
All right.
And thanks for bringing that to our attention. We really care about our quality of what we deliver, because we know that can be very frustrating.
Great. Excellent. Let's see what we've got here for, sorry, just pulling some new questions out here for you, Dan.
Yes.
Okay, here we go. It's a question from a new user. They're asking, what's the best way to ensure or to verify that you're the exclusive user to a database before you're updating or importing data into an existing table in a database?
Interesting point. Okay, assuming you're on a modern, personally, the way I would, oh, well, okay, if you're Access, that's a little different animal, but we highly recommend you're using SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, etc.
Right.
In that case, what you can use is Alpha has an extensive level of support for database transactions. And especially for critical data like that, we highly recommend that you use the transactional methodology because that will ensure that data is really written properly. And if you're coding in XBasic, when you open a connection, you can actually do what's called starting a connection or start a transaction, perform your stuff in code, and then close that transaction. And thus, the database itself is going to be taking care of making sure that exclusively you have the ability to update that information in a proper way. And that pervades the whole system. So we use, you can enable transactions. Like if I go back in, let me go ahead and go back into my development environment. Bear with me. Pop back there. For people who are new to Alpha, I'm jumping into my Alpha development environment. So let me go ahead and open up a grid here. Let's actually open a UX. This is the data-bound UX. Actually, that's not a data-bound UX. But when you do data binding, oh yeah, it is there. You can specify to do things transactionally. So the properties, let's see if it's on here. No, it's not on that one right there. But you can specify that to do things using database transactions. And the benefit of that is that when you save data, the database is going to make sure that someone else doesn't step on your data at the exact same time. Really important for very high volume kind of scenarios. Let me see if I have a grid, if there's an example of that real quick. That's a chart. Sorry about that. Let's get the grid here. Properties. Where is that? No, that's all there. Oh, I think it's in the update settings in a grid. Let's see, updatable. Let's see there. Well, I don't have. I apologize. I don't have an exact there. But check out, and the way you look for that is actually if you go to Help, Open Documentation in your system there, and then you can go. This is our handy dandy documentation site that the team is working very strong on. Then look up transactions, and there's a whole section on using transactions that talks about how to use transactions and how to set them up within there. And this one key, especially if you're doing it in code, when you have opened a connection, you can do what's called begin transaction, and then what you do is you execute it, and if everything goes fine, but it gives you full power in terms of rolling back transactions. Let's say there was an error during the process. And this is useful for two reasons. One is making sure you have exclusive rights and use of that table so you don't step on someone else. But also if you're doing a very complicated setup where you're updating this table and then two other tables, and you want to make sure they're all done at the same time properly, you can use a transaction setup where you'll say, okay, database, I'm going to do a bunch of these things. Go ahead and start recording it. And then if anything goes wrong, you can say roll it back so you don't have bad data out there. But if everything went okay, you can say commit to the transaction, and it will go ahead and the database will then make it all right. So check out transactions, and I'll have to see, wait here, Alpha 5 grid transaction. Let me see if I can find something really quick on that. You can customize, there you go. You can customize the insert, and there's a great video on here, and I'll go ahead and type this. There's some ways you can customize the insert and update and delete statements inside grids, and it's in this grid right here, you can go in the properties and make some adjustments to it, and that allows you to insert like transactional behavior to allow you to make sure that it works properly. So I'd investigate that for sure. If it's something like an Access database, I honestly don't know off the top of my head how you would ensure making sure you have exclusive rights to that database. And really, if you're using it in something that critical over a bunch of people, I would definitely look at migrating to a MySQL or SQL Server or something along, MariaDB or Oracle, that's something a little more hardcore to make sure that the database helps you maintain that integrity.
Excellent. Another question. This person has a UX control, and they want to change the background color of a field while that field has focus. So normally the background color is white, but when the cursor enters that field, they want it to turn yellow, presumably to show the user where they are and what field they're on.
Ah, I see. Okay.
And when they leave, they want it to turn white again.
Yeah. Okay. So the method for doing that is it's going to take a little bit of JavaScript coding to get that level of dynamics. But let me kind of walk you through how you'd approach it. So here I have a UX component, and for people who are new, this is our form component, and I've selected one of my field controls here, and this is all just plain field controls here. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to here to the onBlur event. Okay, so what I've done is down here are all of the sort of JavaScript actions, like someone clicks on something or they mouse over it or they mouse out, etc. And one of the important ones is called the onBlur event, is on focus and on blur. On blur fires when the control loses focus. On focus fires when the control gets focus. So you're going to use a combination of these two action JavaScript. And so what happens is when someone creates or makes this field the focus, like they click in it or tab in it, then this event on focus is going to fire. When they leave that field, the on blur event will change. Now we have a on change event, but that's only going to fire when someone leaves or changes the data in that field. So you can have a situation where someone goes into a field, doesn't change it, moves it out. You still want the visual indicator to move. So you don't want to use the on change, because if the on change doesn't occur, then you could have multiple things lit up at one time. So these are the on focus. Now in the on focus right here, there really aren't any that I'm aware of action JavaScript for modifying what the field looks like. But you can use JavaScript, and what you can do with JavaScript is that these are just plain text boxes. So what you can do is you can get a pointer to this text box, and then once you have that pointer, then you can get you can set the properties of that text box, the HTML properties, and that's where I'm going to break down a little bit. But let me go ahead and show you how you would approach this. So again, I have selected company name. I've got the on focus event. So I'm going to go in here, and actually let's go ahead and show how that would work real quick. So I'm just going to do something really simple and say alert, I have focus. Okay, so when the person goes into there, it's going to fire this JavaScript alert. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to my on blur, and I'm going to go to text mode, and I'm going to say alert out of focus. And let's see how this works here. Okay, so basically I've added some JavaScript when it gets focus in there. So let's go ahead and go into the working preview. If everything works, I'm going to see what happens here. Okay. So it's on my second page, so I'm going to go over to that second page. Okay, so there's my company name. Notice when I clicked on it, it triggered that event. And notice, and I think it's because of the work, you have to, this is because I'm using you can, once you're out of it, like when you, I'm kind of stuck there, sorry. It was, it's because of the way I'm using this right now. I don't have that, so. Oops, so much for a nice clean demo there. Let's go. Oh no.
You've looped it.
Well, I'm in the mobile environment. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay. Uh-oh, I've looped it. I'm going in there. I just want to get out real quick.
While you're restarting that, I pasted in some code into the chat section, which shows you the JavaScript code you need to change a style element. So,
good. Okay.
So if you guys
I want to show them how to adjust that, because yeah. So use that code there. But oh well, so much for a really powerful little demonstration here. I'm in a loop right here. That's me. Oh my. Okay. Nice thing is Alpha is really nice. So once you shut her down, as long as you've saved the form, you can go right back in and start where you started out. So I save things often from that standpoint and there from that standpoint. So let's go demonstration. We'll open up this. So, okay. So you'll want to use that on focus that goes in there, and then when they go out of that area, then what will happen is it's going to fire the on blur event. And so what's going to happen is, using the code in the chat window, you're going to modify that field to say the color's red, and then what happens is you put the equivalent code in the on blur that says, now that I've lost focus, turn it back to white or blue or whatever the original color is. So you need to look at the on blur and on focus events, and then add the text that Dave has put in there to actually change the color using JavaScript. And it works really nicely. And it's all client-side. This is very powerful. All of those events are firing client-side. So when it's going to be near instantaneous for the person who's using the form, because it doesn't have to go back to the server at all. It's going to just happen right on the local web browser or mobile device.
Right. Now, the example I just pasted into the chat window, if you use it, it's at the end of it ends with style.color. That's actually the text color. In this case, the person wanted the background color changed, so it would be background-color equals, and then you can either use a hexadecimal value for the color, or you can use a name for it, depending on how much precision you'd like. So just a quick note.
And this is really powerful. Basically, this is all pure like JavaScript, and so what it's saying is, get the element, and this is the name of the element here, and then it's saying modify the style, and then the style has many different attributes to it. The font, the color, etc.
You can't see it from your screen. I think you're pointing to...
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm over here pointing at my GoToWebinar
control panel, which is hidden. So
let's see. Let me go ahead and...
What's he pointing to? If you could just copy that and stick to something, we'll can explain that a little bit more.
And might help if you could actually read the text. Okay. So this
example JavaScript portion too. Sorry.
Yep. So this is that's just telling which component on the screen you want to talk about. Then the dot structure is modify the style, and then within the style you have all these different style factors you can do: boarding, padding. I mean, all that's available in HTML and CSS. So you can, in his case, it was what, background dash color, and this aligns to a standard. So actually, the way you figure that out is you can go into this company name right here, go to the style button right here. You'll notice that I've selected this field, and then I go to style here, I select that. I can then say I want the background color to be, say, red. Okay. And you'll notice this is the actual, so let me go ahead and copy that. So now I go over here, and I could actually go in there. And so I'll paste this text here just so you can see that is the HTML code. So in this case, you would go background color equals, and there. So that's how I determine, and so I don't have to go learn HTML and CSS. I just click on this style button, so I can say, you know what, I want the border, I want a solid border, and I want that border to be width of 1 pixel, and the color of that border to be black. So now when I click OK, you'll notice in here that I have, and I'll go ahead and copy this out and go back over here, I have a whole series of settings here. So I can go in here and I just copy this over and over, and I can run these one after another. You can say my h1 style dot border dash width equals 1px border dash color. So you can actually change multiple style attributes at one time to get exactly the effect you want. And so I use the built-in style builder inside Alpha to kind of figure out what is this terminology, what is the name of the style element, in this case, border dash style, bird dash width, and then I just modify this this line here to add those, and I just do one, I do the color, then the border width, etc., one after the other. And so that's an easy way for you to kind of not have to go out and learn a bunch of CSS to be able to make it look the way. I just get it looking right the way I want to, because when I actually preview that form, if I've modified the style, it's going to show right away, and I can say, oh yeah, that's what I want it to look like.
Terrific. Just a quick question someone had about the alpha memo. They were wondering if the source files are available so that people could play with them. And the answer is, I'm not sure, but I'd love to get hold of them. So I just sent an email off to Dan to see if I get hold of those files, and I will probably get them, and I will put them up on our GitHub account, which is github.com/alphaanywhere. So as soon as I get them, I will post them so you can play around with those. Another question we had here is, what's the best way to capture a signature that you for reuse on an ink control in a form? So
that question actually was posed over the, and I apologize, I don't have the answer for that yet. I'm still researching it. I got caught up with some other things. That's in my list of things to do. So I don't have the answer on that right now. The issue is the person would like to capture a signature. Actually,
once.
Okay. If you want to use the signature capture, that's easy, because when I add a signature capture, and I'm going back in my development environment, when I actually do a signature capture control, when it stores this data, it stores it as an image file, a blob. And therefore then in our report editor, you can just point to that field and say render that image on the report, and voila, you'll see the signature that's been captured. With the ink control, I am not sure on the report editor how you would add think of it as an ink control viewer. You could put a control on there, because if you notice, the ink control is saving text in a field in the database. So if you were to just drag that field out, you would just see that gobbledygook text. You wouldn't see the actual ink signature. So I apologize, I don't have the answer. I'd say use the signature capture if you can for now, but if you really want to use an ink control to render it on a report, I have to do a little bit more research, and we'll get the answer. And if I can't provide it, I'll get it over to Chris so he can share it with the team.
There's probably no downside to using signature capture control in this particular case, though, I would assume. I mean, you're just, even though it's being saved as an image and not being saved as its, its individual strokes and stuff, it could still, because it's being saved as an image, it's really very reusable.
Yes, very, very much so. Although we are, and actually Selwyn's already done some pre-work on it in terms of using the ink control as a signature capture mechanism.
Right.
And so I want to get the answer on that. And it's also a good question there. It's like, well, how do you present ink data in a report kind of scenario? Right now we have the ink control that will render it on the screen for you. So you point it to the database, it takes that text and renders it either on top of an image or whatever you have to do there. But how would you then translate that into something that's on a printable medium, like when you want to do a report or like a form? You want to show a form with the person's signature on that form. How would you do that? So we're doing some research on that. Apologize, we don't have the answer right now, but it's on our hot list to get resolved.
Cool. One person wrote in saying that they had used ink on the Android, and they found it was very sluggish compared to the signature capture control. Although I'm trying to get details as to, was it drawing slowly or was it saving slowly? They said when they use signature capture, it seemed to work like a charm. So I don't know if it works better on Android than it does on iOS.
And at this point, and the other part about a signature capture too is that you'll see in our next demonstration is that you have an enormous amount of power in terms of laying it out. So for instance, what you'll want to do is strip down the ink control so it has the bare minimum you need to actually render, say, a signature, which is a very simple, you have a single type of ink, which is a black line, and you're drawing in a very constrained area. If you notice the ink control right in when I did my demonstration, you could have multiple pins, you could have multiple sides, you could zoom in, zoom out, you could drag, and all these kind of things there, which are overkill for just pure signature capture. So yeah, so maybe it was just trying to do, it is going to be a little more sluggish because it's going to have a lot more facility to say, take a large drawing, move around that drawing, mark up different parts of that drawing and render it on the screen. But I do know, and I'll test it on just doing a signature capture kind of technique. Someone's actually provided me some information around that. I'll look into that and find out. But signature capture is, I like that control because it is really bulletproof. It's very mature. It's been out for a while. It saves it as an image file, so it just, you know, and it's not a very big image file. We're talking maybe 2K of data in the database itself, because it, you know, because it's saving mainly white space. There's just not a lot of stuff that goes into that blob once it's saved into the backend database.
Excellent. So here's a question, which I think you're going to touch on next week anyway, but at the risk of jumping the gun.
Sure.
The question is, where is that ink stored? If it's not saved in the image when you're doing the annotation, do you put it in a field? Do you put it stored locally?
Good point.
Where does it go?
Yeah, basically it's that, and I'll show you a database where I have an example of that real quick.
Great.
So let's go ahead and go to my localhost. This is a MySQL database. By the way, I'm in navicat.com. It's my preferred, don't get paid by them, but it's my preferred tool for working with databases. Nice thing about Navicat, I can look at MySQL databases and SQL Server databases using the same technique. And there's a number of different tools out of there. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this table design here. So in here, I have an image, and this is a MySQL table. And you'll notice it's of type long blob. But I'm going to actually allow myself to annotate that image. So I have a second field. In this case, it's the inspection image ink, and that's of type long text. So it's actually the image is saved in one field and the ink is saved in another. And in fact, if I go in here and show you an example of that, you'll see here, as I scroll over, I've got a blob of 18K. That's not a signature. That's actually an image I uploaded. And then you'll notice that I have a ink on top of that image, and that's stored here in this field right here. And in fact, let me go into this mode, and you'll see the image is not showing here, but this is all the ink that was used to draw on top of that image. So you're going to have two fields, one for your image, one for your ink, and then they're going to interact and interrelate with each other. That's in the case of like what I showed you before, where you capture an image, say on your phone, and then you're going to draw right on it. You can, if you want, if that image will never change, you don't actually have to have a separate table. You can actually just tell it, always display this image. So let's say what I was talking about earlier is that, let's say you have a control panel, and you just want, every time an inspector goes out, you want them to draw on that control panel, maybe the settings of stuff or some piece of information that's associated with it. So they're not actually taking a picture in the field, they're just drawing on top of something. Or maybe you have a form and you want them to actually use ink to kind of check the form. I mean, there's many different things you can do. Like maybe you want to highlight the fuel level by just kind of squiggling up till a thermometer style thing. You can tell the ink control to specifically always look at one image. In that case, you don't need a separate image like in your database to be able to use them together. Then you're just storing, all you're really storing is the ink data itself. And we're just scratching the surface in terms of how people are going to use the ink control. But in this case, you would have the image as a long blob for MySQL and an inspection image ink as a long text in MySQL. And that's how I store the data and provide it so you can have that dynamic capability.
That is great. I'm just looking through the questions here now. Not a lot here. Here's a, I don't know if we have enough time to get into this one, but we'll try it out anyway.
Sure.
This person wants to set sort of a central address in an alternate view, doing a radius search with data from a selected record from a list or drop-down. So that sounds like a mapping question.
Yeah, it's definitely a mapping question.
And so the question is, how do they supply the map with data from their drop-down for a particular record?
Okay. built into Alpha is an extensive level of JavaScript that supports mapping. So I don't know if I have, yeah, I think I have an example here where I have map it. So built into Alpha first is Action JavaScript called Google Map Method UX method that actually does the piece towards you. So if you like, you can do the different things. So I'm not sure what they're trying to do, but in this case, using Action JavaScript, you can add a marker to the map, you could add multiple markers, you could show and hide them, you could center the map on a specific location, etc. So I would first look at this and see if any of these commands will do what you're wanting to do. And what you can do then is in, say, your on change event for that drop-down box or a button, you can refer to the value of that drop-down box and use that information to either show a marker or hide a marker or set a location of those pieces there. Now the alternative to that is that if that doesn't support you, if we go ahead and go into here and I go ahead and I'm just going to, actually let me just add another button here so it's a little simpler here. If we go in here and instead of Action JavaScript we click on text mode and we go insert component method and we type map. So this is my JavaScript editor where I can just type in JavaScript right here. It's also got code complete so I can be looking up things along those lines there. But often I find it's easy if I'm looking kind of generically, I go down here to the bottom to insert UX component method and then it shows me all the methods and I can type map. And here are all of the JavaScript functions that can do things like get route, clear route, refresh, do things like that. And this is where I would look next. And the nice thing about this is that if you notice right here, it's actually got some example data. So you can see it's got examples of that code. So I can then manipulate that map using JavaScript that can then read the value of that drop-down box. So in this case, let's take this example here is set the center location. This is the name. So you give it the map control. So in my case on mine, I don't show there anymore, but I have map. I can just write this little piece of JavaScript that says get the pointer to the map, set the center to be a specific latitude and longitude. So maybe that latitude and longitude is what is in the drop-down box, and then center, or in this case, center on a specific address. So maybe there's an address in that drop-down box. I can actually feed it the value of that drop-down box here. So I'd look through here, first see if there's Action JavaScript. If there's not Action JavaScript, I would definitely look in here to see if there's a function that's there that's available. And then worst comes to worst is that this is a Google map. So this is rendering a Google map. And so it will accept any and all Google Map JavaScript commands. So if there's not actually something we've already pre-built in it, you can actually go on the web and find a piece of JavaScript that's manipulating a Google map, and that JavaScript will work in Alpha because we're just using the Google Map JavaScript API to display and manipulate the map. And again, I always like to point out, go to Help Open Documentation, and in here you can type in map in the search area, and all of our documentation around here is done here. So you, like, for instance, have the map control right here that talks about like that, and getting, we have the new Google JavaScript API that's required. But there's a whole bunch of like data about that's available in there to talk about how to set the different map properties and things like that. So these are built into there. But then you can all of these are available through the JavaScript API. So these are like when you're adding a map, you can set these values, but I can go into the initial zoom level there and it shows that. It doesn't show me the equivalent, it doesn't show me the, see anything else over there? No, I apologize. Those are just for setting it when you add the pieces. But do know that beneath the service, there's a complete set of JavaScript APIs that allow you to manipulate that map any way you want to. And there's some really good examples of some of that on, like there's a great video that shows showing adding multiple markers using just pure JavaScript with a JavaScript map or with a Google map on your control. So I hope that kind of gives you some pointers. No doubt you'll be able to do what you need to do. The tricky part is how much JavaScript are you going to have to do? Is it built in? Is it one of the built-in commands that I just showed you? Or is it going to be something you're going to have to kind of tailor? But you will get it to work, for sure.
That's great. Thank you. Well, we're just about out of time. We did have one more question, which I don't think we'll be able to, in fact, I know we won't be able to cover, but it had to do with EAN, the International Article Number. I know EAN and should be IAN, but it's one of the variants of the UPC code. And the question is, can we scan them? And can we read them? Can we work with them? And the answer is yes, we can. So we'll have to address that in another session. And the other has to do with RFID. There is hardware available for that, which can be attached to a cell phone or mobile device, an RFID reader, and that can be read with PhoneGap, which we do also talk to. So it's possible to do both of them, but we don't have enough time really to cover those. If you've got something specific, though, that you would like us to address, please send an email to guides, G-U-I-D-E-S, @alphasoftware.com, so we can take a look at them before our next webinar.
Yep, and we'll be looking into that ink on a report question, how that would be handled.
We'll do that one as well. Great.
Yes.
So thank you very much, everyone who attended. Thank you, Dion, for presenting, and keep those questions coming to guides@alphasoftware.com. Hope to see you next week in another webinar. Take care, and goodbye.